never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy. He can't feel anything. You see? I don't feel anything.
You wanted me. Here I am.
I want to see what you do. And you didn't disappoint. You let 5 people die, and you let Dan take your place. Even to a guy like me, that's cold.
Where's Dent?
Those mobsters, those fools want you gone so they can go back. They cannot go back because you change everything forever.
Then why do you want to kill me?
Change everything forever.
Then why do you want to kill me?
I don't want to kill you. Why should I kill you? What I would do without you? You complete me.
You're garbage! Who kills for money?
Don't talk to me like that. Like one of them. You are not. You are not. You're just a freak like me. They need you right now, but when they don't, they cast you out like a leper. I show you. When the chips go down, these civilized people, they will eat each over. Just like that. Boom. I'm not the monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
Where's that?
You have all this rule, you think they will save you? No, they will not.
I have one rule.
Then that's the rule you have to break to find the truth.
Which is?
The only sensible way to live in this world is without rules. And tonight, you are going to know one rule.
I'm considering it.
If you want to save one of them, you have to play my little game. Yes, you have to.
Yeah?
You know, for a while, I thought you were dead. The way you throw yourself after her. Look at you go. Does Harvey know about you and your little Bonnie? Damn it.
Where are they?
Killing is making a choice.
Where are they?
Choose between one life or the other. Your friend, the district attorney, or his blushing bride to be. You have nothing to threaten me with, nothing to do with all your strength. It didn't hurt. Do it again. Don't worry, I will tell you what I am. Both of them. And that's the point. You have to make a choice. He's at 252nd Street, and she's in Avenue X. But you have to make a choice. Oh, Batman! Have fun! Batman.
Oh, that was something.
Yeah, no, amazing.
All right, so we are back. We've watched The Room.
Mm-hmm.
And that is
Tommy Wiseau.
Ooh, Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, he acts in more than one thing.
And we do
Does he though? Does he really? Yeah. Is it acting?
He's acting.
No.
I
have to agree.
I don't know if
Forrest, that's not acting.
That's not acting. I think that
him.
Tommy Wiseau's been Joker-fied in that, but you know,
yeah,
in the room, I think it's just him.
Oh my goodness! So let's have somebody sum up the plot. Who wants to do that?
Not me.
Oh my goodness!
Normally I would do it, but I think Forrest is the expert on this one.
Yeah, so you know we have Tommy Wiseau playing Johnny, who's all-American guy, clearly. Only from America, nowhere else.
Loves football.
And he seems to have taken on a nice friend group that kind of uses him for his money, including his fiance Lisa, and his best friend Mark. And for some reason, either a leprechaun or a little kid named Denny that depending on that likes to watch everybody bang. I don't know if I can.
There's one
say
in every
that,
friend
but
group.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little weird that it's like his adopted son, maybe, but because he's like, he's like Lisa thinks of you as a son, but everybody apparently in the friend group wants to sleep with Lisa, and she's in love with Johnny's, or I don't know if I'd call it love, but she seems to think she's in love with Tommy Wiseau, aka Johnny's best friend, who is played who's played by Greg Sestero, who is Tommy Wiseau's real life best friend and fake adopted son, if you trust the Disaster Artist account of it. So yeah, I mean, I think that just about sums it up. It's a love triangle, or a love. I mean, I guess love. I don't even know what the shape is, but the main plot is a love triangle between Johnny, Mark, and Lisa, and
How does that end for Johnny?
not well. I'll say that. It ends with a pretty amazing suicide scene where he masturbates with the red dress before eventually blowing his brains out.
It was something.
Yeah.
Oh, it was something.
Definitely film.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain the plot because I feel like there's so many different like plot threads that happen throughout it that happen for 10 or 15 seconds that don't quite amount to anything. But
No.
just explaining the plot makes it sound a lot more boring than it actually is, I think.
It may be equally boring as watching it.
You think that watching The Room is boring?
Yeah.
I think watching The Room is an incredible experience.
Well, I got a lot of crocheting done.
There's a lot of I guess drawn out moments, which you can expect from someone who doesn't really understand the art of filmmaking whatsoever. There's a lot of things that could have been cut down in post if he had actually had like a
Yeah. Well, I did think it was interesting that it was done with such a relatively high budget for what actually got produced. That was interesting. It kind of gave it the feel that they set out to make a porno and then got shy.
Yeah. I guess maybe a porno by someone who's never had sex. So they're kind of
like they're like, oh, we're gonna make a porno, and then the film starts rolling, and they're like, you can only see my butt.
Well, and some boobs,
Yeah.
some boobs.
I do think it's pretty amazing. I mean, it got pointed out in Disaster Artist too. It got the book and the movie, and it got pointed out pretty much by everyone who's watched it. But he seems to be having sex with her belly button.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone points that out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is
It's a technique. It's a choice.
yeah.
Like the movie. Lots of choices being made.
I don't know if it's a choice by omission of an understanding of how sex works, or if it's a choice deliberately, but it does seem like a choice.
I think it was just a bad camera angle.
Yeah.
Like
It might have been a misunderstanding of mechanics on one guy's part.
Yeah, that's kind of the.
I don't think they were actually going to have sex in front of the camera. I think it was just trying to act like you're having sex, and the worst camera angle for really trying to act like you're having sex without having sex.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Right?
So your theory is that Tommy Wiseau did understand how sex works. My theory is that he did not.
Yeah, see, that's my theory too.
I mean, because
you seem like you are the expert, Mark.
He's got some problem.
Yeah, but I think I don't want to go into what I think about the man's sex life. Actually, I've decided not to follow that thread.
Okay.
But I think it was just a poor camera angle choice.
I All right, so one,
Like if it's your first time shooting a sex scene, you're gonna make some mistakes. That's all.
See, the thing is though that the actual crew that he hired had worked on a lot of things, and I mean, they go into this in Disaster Artist, but the guy that he hires, Sandy, actually has an incredibly long and like somewhat successful like IMDb list of titles that he's worked on.
Well, and how many of them included really good sex scenes?
And it turns out like he actually wants to get a director credit on this, which
which
why
which
would
says
that
a lot.
help you?
Which says a lot about how successful the movie's actually been. Because
I guess so. I mean,
because like if the movie was as unsuccessful as it was before, obviously, Greg Sestero wrote The Disaster Artist as a book, and before James Franco got fascinated by Tommy Wiseau, and before that movie won a Golden Globe, like Disaster Artist, obviously, not The Room.
Yeah.
but like before all of that, like I guarantee you, if it had just faded into oblivion, he wouldn't have wanted to get a director's credit. But the fact that it actually has created like a crazy elongated moment since 2003 like says a lot about how this movie has been perceived by audiences.
Yeah, people have been trying to tell me to watch this movie I guess it's going on 20 years now, and no one has ever described it in a way that made me go, yeah, let's watch that. Like, no. The only way I would have watched this movie is to do this podcast. Like that there is nothing appealing about this movie to me.
I second that. I mean, I've been familiar with The Room for years before today, and heard a lot of what people have had to say about it, and was just never interested beyond that. But thanks to you, we've now both seen it.
You've broadened our horizons. Oh, we are so grateful.
You've succeeded as a guest.
All right,
I guess my experience with it is Disaster Artist coming out and like watching that trailer a bunch of times and thinking like that trailer was hilarious, and then right before watching that movie going, all right, well I should probably watch The Room. So 2 hours before I watched Disaster Artist in theaters, I watched The Room for the first time and was just like amazed by it. And then I watched Disaster Artist and like, that movie is good and hilarious and like is, an amazing rendition of an awfully just a movie that fails on every level. But then you think about like why that movie has been absolutely fascinating to people for 20 years, and you start realizing like the passion inherent in Tommy Wiseau's creative process, I guess, is something that, like, as someone that has spent their life wanting to be a filmmaker, is something that's been incredibly interesting to me.
I mean, he's got confidence. That's
and it was a passion project.
Yeah.
Okay, so most people say, and I mean, that's a really vague statement and all, but the Citizen Kane of bad movies, that it is the worst movie ever made. And you're sitting here saying that you think it is in fact a good movie. And other than you're wrong, do you want to like?
Well, I
make your case, but like what? How?
Well, I think that good is relative. I think that it is a fascinating and entertaining movie, and I think that the fact that it has passion behind it and has absolutely no pretense of wanting to make money, because that movie cannot make money. In fact, that movie hemorrhaged money to the point where it never made any money until, at least until the book rights were auctioned off. The fact that it's an experience, it's an experiential product, in the same way that, like, I mean, you go see which are not good movies, but you go see like a Marvel movie, or you go see like a lot of like, cult movies, like it's an experience. You're being sold an experience more than you're being sold a good piece of art. And I don't think cinema needs to be a good piece of art. And I think the fact that he's put so much of himself and his creative process into it makes it incredibly different than anything you're really going to see. Like you're watching, it's just, the whole thing is fascinating because you're watching from someone who clearly doesn't understand human interaction. Someone who I don't know whether it's, the fact that he's like from an Eastern European vague country somewhere, like I'm guessing probably Poland, but I'm not, that's been like speculated, but he doesn't seem to understand the interactions of any of his characters. And he seems to also have complete creative control, to the point where, like, it's not just that the dialogue is stunted, it's that the way that the dialogue is given between characters is incredibly stunted. Like, there's just something off about the entire thing. And to me, watching an entire movie where every part of it is off is like an amazing experience. It just, because I don't think that movie could be replicated. I don't think you can go, you know what, I'm going to make a bad movie. You couldn't make something as entertaining as that and just say, I'm going to make a bad movie.
Yeah, I agree that if, as he claimed afterwards, that it was supposed to be a dark comedy. I think if you set out to make that dark comedy, the lack of plot would be more disturbing. The absolutely ham-handed acting would be disturbing. No, it does only work as this is a genuine expression of something.
Yeah.
Well, it's a genuine expression of pain too. It's a genuine expression of pain, of betrayal,
yes,
of creativity, of passion, of a world that's completely don't fucking ask me how that guy has millions of dollars in a bank account, but like whatever the fuck happened to him, you're clearly seeing raw emotion on a level that like I don't think even with directors that I think are amazing directors, which obviously Tommy Wiseau is not, but
No.
any like amazing directors who really do have something to say and really are putting their heart and soul into a project, you still don't come out with that level of raw emotion and that level of like pain and betrayal and just like horror that you come out with at the end of watching The Room and wasting an hour and a half on it.
So what I thought was really interesting was that he did the recreation of the Joker because as I was watching The Room, what was going through my mind is, I think it's actually a better movie than Joker.
You think that The Room is a better? Well,
Mm-hmm.
the Joker.
I think The Room is a better movie than Joker. But that's the only movie that I can say it's better than.
I think Joker was trying to do something different than. I mean, obviously it was.
I think Joker was trying to capture the man that we saw in The Room.
I need to follow up on that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say earlier to your point about, the writing and the delivery of the lines between characters being really stilted. Some people have done analysis of The Room just by watching it and come away with this is a movie that is very concerned with realism because the characters repeat themselves a lot in the same conversations like people do in real life. And you'll see people ordering before they get to the counter. And you see all the moments leading up to actual scenes that normally don't make it to the final cut.
Yeah.
And then I also watched a video.
He sets up the full tape recorder.
Exactly.
He's waiting at the counter and he has multiple people order their meals and keeps the people ordering their things at the coffee shop before he can order his like.
Exactly. And I think it was Vanity Fair or one of these YouTube channels. They'll get directors on to break down scenes, and they got Tommy Wiseau to break down a scene of The Disaster Artist.
Yeah.
And a lot of what he talked about in this particular scene was how when people aren't portraying real things, real emotions in movies are worse. And that's what he's always going for is realism.
I also think you're seeing this movie through a very strange prism. You're seeing it's realism through the eyes of Tommy Wiseau.
Exactly. But that's what he's going for.
Yeah. And if you're someone who has an inability, as he seems to connect to human beings, like there just seems to be something that, I mean, I don't like want to speculate about whether it's, that he's not, from this country or whatever, like his,
I think he connects with people. He's got a best friend. It's just not in the typical way.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like through these emotional scenes he's writing, because he's clearly angry at Greg Sestero throughout this movie for betraying him. Like the betrayal.
He's angry at the world.
Yeah,
and women.
He's an incel.
He's definitely
and that's what
angry
I thought is that this is like an incel poster child. And that's why I say it's better than Joker, is because Joker was supposed to be the poster child for incels. And
I don't think. See, that's I
Joker
disagree
was
that that's
celibate.
what.
Johnny was not. So
yeah, but
Johnny fucked.
Yeah,
sorry, you're gonna have to put that.
we'll fix it in post.
yeah, but that's in his mind. See, that's the thing, is that it's in his mind. In his mind, that's how he is with women. In his mind, that's how women behave. And that's why I think even the weird scenes that don't make any other sense, like the plots don't go anywhere, I think he's setting up like the stereotype of what people are doing when he's not there. You know,
they're having sex in his house when he's not around.
Yeah, so everybody's having this life that seems to be circled around how they can get one over on him. And he is, in his mind, an excellent lover, an excellent provider, a really true friend, a successful person in business, a hero that can come and rescue someone who's being shot at with a gun.
To be fair,
that likes football.
He seems to be one of those things, because if you have $6 million in a bank account and multiple houses, like, he has to be somewhat successful at business,
or came into it.
Yeah. I mean, inheritance shouldn't be taken off the table.
I don't think that's what it was. I think that his superficial connections to people would be different if he had inherited it. And I think that there's probably a very strange story in how he got that money and then ended up where he was. I don't know what it is. Nobody knows what it is. But I mean, maybe that's me wanting to have too much faith in the backstory of Tommy Wiseau. So that could be my own.
I couldn't have any faith in it. None. Like,
there's some weird I don't know who put this theory out there, but like the book Disaster Artist. He was like a toy maker in Eastern Europe, and he like created these toys that kids bought there and like made millions of dollars on like a very popular like Polish toy, and that's how he got his money. That
was a bird, and also that's why his name is Wiseau, because it's French for bird, except he spelled it with a W. I mean, it's just
that, but I could see that being the case. Sure. I could see that being where his name came from.
But who makes millions of dollars selling bird toys on the street? Like,
I mean, Rubik's Cube is something.
Yeah, but then why don't we know about this bird toy? Like, why didn't we have one growing up? Like,
well, because he wasn't selling it here. He was selling it in like Eastern Europe.
Yeah, Amy.
And probably at a time
known for its capitalist, like.
It's a plot. The CIA did not want us to know how good the USSR's bird toys were. And they buried it. They buried that information.
The how the average Joe could become a multimillionaire with bird toys in the Soviet bloc.
Yeah, that's the one thing you could really become a multimillionaire in.
Yeah, bird toys.
People don't know that. Stalin really liked bird toys, and it just, it kind of filtered down by the time.
Yeah, but no, like every character though was portrayed as you see an incel's imagination of the character is that, and that's why I think he comes across as an incel, because the woman is just outrageously like promiscuous.
Mm-hmm.
The woman's like a devil.
I know. And like, but also her mother is really, you should really, she's supposed to be kind of like the wise person that notices that Johnny's a really good guy. And like, nobody's mother tells them that they need to marry the guy that they just said they didn't like. Like, that is not how mothers work.
Well, he's just that good of a guy.
Right.
And the misogyny is just a huge theme in this movie.
It is.
They're constantly making light of domestic abuse, and that's ignoring the way the female characters are written.
But he also
definitely hit her, right? When he's like, I did not hit her, he hit her. Like he goes during the conversation where he's trying to like explain to us that he didn't hit her, he pushes her and like slams her on the couch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I think in his mind that wasn't hitting.
Yeah.
Because he portrayed himself as nothing but basically angelic. So in his mind, that wasn't hitting.
Well, and if you look at this as a passion project, probably based on a real experience, the takeaway would be this is how he viewed a failed relationship in the aftermath. And not understanding, like she just does things to make it interesting or because she's bored and not for any real concrete reason.
But he treats the male characters the same way. I mean, they talk a lot about the misogyny here, and it 100% reeks of misogyny.
Yeah.
But he treats the male characters that way too. I mean, they're just as shallow. They're just, hey, wanna toss a football? like there's such like
male bonding,
dude bro stereotypes. Like this
I think his football. I think his football obsession has a lot to do with this weird, like he's clearly not telling everybody in his life about his past, not telling them where he's from. He's lying about it, saying he's from New Orleans. He won't mention the fact that he's from Eastern Europe, and the football thing I think is like all like because he says it all the time in interviews, like all American guy. He's like, Johnny's all American guy. So the football is like he's trying to show like, look, I do connect with American culture. But then it's funny that they don't know how to throw a foot. Like when he's directing it, they're clearly not able. So even his connection to that doesn't work out.
But half the friends that he has in this thing, and the reason why their plots, quote, don't go anywhere, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to give him an opportunity to be a hero. And they were supposed to give him the opportunity for how he viewed friends to work. Like, we're going to go out and toss a football. Like, friending accomplished. Later, dudes. Yeah. Like, that was his entire depth of how to engage with a man. Like, his ability to engage with women was really poor, but his ability to engage with men was just as poor.
Yeah. Well, and that's really why I think it's kind of a brilliant movie. It's not... You don't get the opportunity very often to view this stuff through a prism of, because movies are collaborative efforts, right? Like in pretty much every case, a movie is a collaborative effort. Like one person says, all right, here's a script. And then there's a director that directs it. I mean, sometimes it's the same person, but even in those cases with someone like Kubrick that like is a writer director who's like in complete control, there are multiple people writing it with him. There are people that are used as a sounding board. There's no sounding board here. You're getting a completely unfiltered view into the mind of like the strangest person like in history. You know what I mean? So like the fact that he's able to do this and he takes complete directorial control. He's obviously using actors that like are aspiring actors, which
they're just desperate to get a job.
Yeah. And I feel really bad because I think any kind of association with this movie for any of the actors that were trying to get a job from here and told people that they were in the room would have tanked their future acting career.
Oh, yeah. I actually looked at the IMDb of the cast, and it was a lot of them wound up going on to work with him in other films. Like, it was just like, okay, I'm a Tommy Wiseau actor now.
All right, Charlie, I see you. I might have overstated my case on this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna stand by it though. Like
this movie was supposed to blow our minds with how bad it was,
and it is bad. But okay, it's still better than the Joker, and here's why. I disagree
with what you think that the Joker was trying to accomplish. So I think
it was trying to give a psychological.
Wait, I'm just saying. So my after thing is going to be that I disagree with what you think the Joker was trying to accomplish. But like,
well, you gotta listen to our Joker episode to know exactly.
I think the Joker was designed to give you a window into a mind that was kind of disenfranchised, devolving, reacting to a world that was not accepting of him. It was supposed to be a window into a soul that becomes disturbed.
Someone living on the outskirts of society.
And I think The Room is an actual window into someone who is disturbed.
No, 100%.
I think The Room actually accomplishes what the Joker tried to create. And I mean, what I said about the Joker is that if I were a budding young school shooter, I would be offended by my representation there. But The Room, on the other hand, really seems to be an actual glimpse into someone who feels ousted by society and doesn't actually have the same wiring to get social interactions going the way like a neurotypical person would.
Yeah. And no, 100. I don't think that I disagree with that's what the Joker is trying to accomplish. I think the Joker is actually really superficial and is basically just an attempt to create Taxi Driver, a modern era version of Taxi Driver, at a time when neoliberalization.
But if it's trying to recreate Taxi Driver, like why would you do that? Taxi Driver was an excellent movie.
Because Scorsese was originally set to produce the Joker. And they delivered a script to him that was a lot like Taxi Driver. It was an attempt to recreate a Scorsese movie. It's detailed that that's what it was. And then Scorsese read it and said, you know what, I have other things to do, and left the project.
Good for him.
But it was in development so far at that point that they just went with the script that they had already created. So they were just kind of I think the Joker had things to say about neoliberalization, which I liked about it.
I think the things that they had to say were very, very stupid and surface level.
I think I agree that they were surface level. I think that not a lot of movies have said it in recent times. I just there were things that I liked about the Joker, which were like the fact that his mental health place was shut down because austerity had taken hold, which it was at that time. And he was kind of thrown out. Scorsese wanted to call it the Jokester, but they wouldn't. No, so
the Jokester would have been a much better name for that movie.
I would have been more forgiving, I think, if that had been the title.
But if they're wanting to remake Taxi Driver did a good job at watching a devolved mental state person, and kind of how they developed and reacted to the world around them, and struggled with their disenfranchisement and turned violent. Taxi Driver was a really good movie. So
you're not gonna listen. I'm not making the case that the Joker was good, and I'm just explaining. I think the background.
The Room is better. I'm just saying The Room was a better, like it added more to the disenfranchised male than Joker did.
So I think that you have to look at the Joker politically, and where like the time period that we were in, when Taxi Driver came out was at the which. It did a brilliant job. Like Taxi Driver is a brilliant movie. Taxi Driver is one of the best movies ever made. But it was at a time, Scorsese had the forethought, I guess, at a time when neoliberalization was taking hold and the social safety net was failing people. And people had gotten out of, Vietnam and realized that like there was no social safety net for them. And it was at a time when the American dream, quote unquote, like the middle class white American dream that was, promised to people for 30 years was fading.
Yes.
And Scorsese was incredibly prescient at understanding that and creating a movie around it that was brilliant.
Taxi Driver was timely. It was very timely.
Yeah.
I don't see that same crisis. Not saying that the crisis didn't continue, but I don't know that Joker added anything to the crisis of neoliberalism. If that makes sense.
So I think that the fact that the Joker was set at that time and is a retrospective look at things like mental health centers shutting down, the social safety net failing. It was very heavy-handed with it, but there is a layer to it where it's commenting in retrospect on that moment of crisis that's done nothing but avalanche since then.
Oh yeah,
because we are at literally like the worst possible fucking point. Like obviously, it went from Carter, which was kind of when Taxi Driver was made, Carter was kind of beginning the process of neoliberalization, to Reagan, who obviously fucking avalanched during that, to Clinton, who, not obviously this isn't like a representation, like,
Yeah, no, we get it.
That. But like Clinton, the Clintonian era of U.S. politics was the Democratic Party deciding that, no, we too are joining into this neoliberalization.
Yes.
And so like, to the same level that Reagan was going to. So this consensus between these two these two very fucking devious party establishments. So I think that the Joker on some level was an attempt to comment on that after the fact that it's already happened more than you could possibly imagine, and saying like, I'm going to comment on the same thing that Taxi Driver was trying to comment on at a time when it was happening, and I'm going to comment on it really heavy-handedly now. I think that if movies or if cinema, wasn't really like
so superhero focus now, like
our neoliberalism has more sex.
With Clinton? Yeah.
No, that's the comment that Jay Hutch left on the in the chat. So I think that I think that if cinema correctly represented, or at least Hollywood, like mainstream cinema, correctly represented what's been happening in the 40 years since Taxi Driver, there would have been many, 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 many similar movies that were themed towards what Taxi Driver was trying to do, because that's a crisis that we've been undergoing since then. But the fact that it really hasn't been commented on that much in mainstream cinema kind of left me with the idea that, oh, well, at least this is being represented in this context. At the same time, though, I think frame for frame, it was kind of just a Scorsese movie that then they realized Scorsese wasn't going to be a part of, and other people went, oh, don't worry, we can kind of create a D-list Scorsese movie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
If I may add, I've never seen Taxi Driver.
Oh, it's good.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Recommended.
But when the Joker came out, and when I watched the Joker, it seemed like it was also a commentary on today's protests and civil movements.
Yeah.
And it was a terrible one.
Oh yeah. Like it made it look like everybody was just raging with no purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I mean.
And
retrospective.
The shoddiest of figureheads.
Yeah. Well, that's what retrospective looks really do, right? Like you don't really look retrospectively at something and say, oh, this is what happened at that time. It always is laden with symbolism about what's happening now. Like otherwise,
and it was saying very stupid things.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, what I remember, like for example, during the Occupy Wall Street movement, the idea that people were taking to the streets to just vent rage that was directed at nothing was very much driven by mainstream media.
I mean,
and not the reality of like
kind of right.
Well, they just didn't have leadership. They didn't have leadership, but they did.
No, they had a bad theory of how political change works. This is going to devolve us into a whole other conversation.
Well, okay, but and I think part of it too is that you're on the East Coast and I'm in Kansas City. Like, what was happening there and what was happening here, and she was on the West Coast. So what was happening in those three spots is likely drastically different.
Yeah. I think it's also, me being someone who's saturated in everything really that the left has done in the last few years, because obviously I went from everything from like, working on, the Michael Brooks show to Jacobin to like, you know what I mean? So like my reading on things, like my analysis of things is a lot different. And my critique.
Were you there for Occupy?
I mean, I remember Occupy happening. I think I was too young to like, really be engaged with it. But but at the time, like I understood what was happening with Occupy, and I think I felt a lot more. I think I felt more strongly about it at the time because it seemed very timely. But before they had even done anything, before they had even occupied anything, they had ceded any kind of political leadership. And,
see, I got asked by one of my friends to go down to the Occupy thing to kind of act as a parliamentarian to try to explain to them how meetings went. And I was like, okay, no.
Yeah.
Because they had decided that they were going to have an anarchist. And, we should sing.
I don't want to.
All right, since you guys are going to do this for audio, I'll read the comments as they come up. You're on the East Coast. I'm in Kansas City. Sounds like the beginning of a great sad country ballad.
I love it. Yeah. And we can't see each other no more.
Well, so y'all are talking about Occupy Wall Street. The Joker came out in 2019. We'd been seeing Black Lives Matter protests.
Yeah.
And one of the big
Yep.
things that was portrayed in, mainstream media was looting and rioting and just trying to take advantage of their neighborhood. And that's what the protests looked like in Joker. They almost immediately devolved into rioting and just burning everything down.
Yep.
But it was, so the difference in Joker is that it wasn't protests over civil rights or race relations or anything like that. It was white incels burning everything down that had decided in the same way that kind of
there were also people of color in that crowd,
which is what Tommy Wiseau was showing us too. I mean, what burning everything down is also shooting yourself in the face. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
It was an incel ballad.
It was an incel ballad before the concept of incels had ever I mean, the internet at that point was a bunch of online forums that
but they existed. They existed.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew those guys.
Some people have not been having sex forever.
Exactly. And Tommy Wiseau is one of them. And
definitely. No, I 100%
back
agree
to
on
the
that.
belly button thing.
Oh, I just don't want to make personal comments.
Oh, he might sue. Yeah, because he also tried to stop a documentary from being made about him because it made him feel bad.
Yeah, but we're not making a documentary about him. We're doing online analysis for 5 people in the room.
Well, and he's got to pay $1 million to the people whose movie he stopped.
Yeah, no, I saw that pop up today when I was looking for the poster to put behind us as we stream this.
Yeah,
I just don't know enough about him. I'm not going to.
I
don't want to.
Okay, just a bit of fun. Did any of the rest of you play the video game?
What?
There's a video game. I played it.
I must have heard about this and then immediately blocked it out.
Oh, it's so bad. I mean, if anything,
is it worse than the room itself?
Here we go. It is.
It's called The Room Tribute.
It almost goes through it.
I like the 64-bit The Room.
I know. And honestly, with the soundtrack, it almost seemed like the soundtrack was designed to be a video game.
Jay Hudge, bad time to disclose my job as Tommy Wiseau's attorney.
Crap.
I don't want to represent you, Amy.
Crap. So you walk around and it does the whole, it does all the lines from the movie. You're just the interactive one. And then whenever it gets the chance, it jiggles his butt cheeks at you.
All right. So a fan-made room video game brings up the exact perfect thing for why I think that it is a good movie. We have to, I guess, discuss what cinema is, as a concept, right? Because if you're saying that cinema is art and it's high art, then no, obviously The Room is a terrible representation.
Well, I mean, it can be. I would say it can be.
Yeah. So, but there's a second definition, I think, which is why people like cult movies so much, which is the experience of going to the movies, enjoying a movie, whether a movie is fun. And I think that a lot of times you'll see movies that are like art films that aren't fun whatsoever. And so movies can do a whole bunch of different things. And if you're, at least in my experience watching The Room, if your interpretation of something a movie can do is give you an enjoyable experience, give you something that you can't see anywhere else, if it's just supposed to be fun, then I think that The Room works on every possible level. Just because it's so bad, I don't think that it was going for that, but the enjoyability of the experience itself for me is why I have watched The Room 1 million times. Watching every possible part of the movie fail on every level is why I think it's good. I'm fascinated by it. I see the dialogue, and you after the fact, you want to quote the movie, you want to show people because you're like, hey, this is something that I think is amazing, and you need to watch this. And then other people are like, wow, that is also like, I also think that's amazing. Maybe on an ironic level, but still, like, you know, so if that is one of cinema's goals, or if that is one of, you know, maybe one thing is film and it's not film, but like a movie's goal, I would recommend The Room to people as like a fun experience more than I'd recommend anything Hollywood's made.
So the way I've chosen to approach movies with this podcast, and that I think we've mostly agreed on, is, you know, movies can be objectively bad in just the use of the medium, right? Like poor audio quality, weird angles, that kind of stuff, bad editing. And then subjectively bad, where it has a negative message or effect on society. So for example, now I'm blanking on movies we've watched for this Ding Ding podcast.
Like The Matrix.
Like The Matrix.
Yeah.
Now we have this legal defense for murder cases called the Matrix defense, where someone can claim that
they believe they're in a simulation,
and that's why they killed somebody in order to try to escape the death penalty, right? Like that
happened. That happened.
Subjectively, a bad result of this movie existing.
So I think that anyone escaping the death penalty is positive for society, because I don't believe in the death penalty.
I also
don't believe in it either.
I think that any defense you could possibly use, if it's not reducing your sentence and it's just getting you out of the death penalty, I think that's a positive for society. But
it actually reduced the sentence quite a bit, because it got the person institutionalized until they were deemed competent, instead of like. And I'm not even for punishment. I'm really just for removing a threat from society.
But if someone really does commit those acts because for whatever reason they've fallen into this perceived simulation after encountering the Matrix,
right?
Then the Matrix has contributed to someone's death, as an example.
And I guess I don't agree with that. Because I think you can watch something that no one else takes a certain way. And if you're like a person who has severe mental illness, you can just, you know, like assume it's like that. You'd have to say at that point, I think that like Taxi Driver has contributed negatively to society. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because, you know, it's contributed to people watching it and saying, oh, this represents me. So like you have to say every anti-war movie has contributed negatively to society, because people have watched pretty much every anti-war movie, and it's given them, like we've talked about this endlessly on this podcast, like, which I guess technically it's not, I mean, my podcast, I guess I'll say, because it's technically your guys'
Movie Night
podcast,
Extravaganza. Let's remind everybody, Forrest Miller from Movie Night Extravaganza.
But there's been a lot of analysis done on anti-war movies where it's like, you know, something that's clearly anti-war, like Full Metal Jacket, contributes to, like, you know, after Full Metal Jacket gets made, which is something like I watched that and I'm horrified by what was happening like in the Vietnam War. And then but then, you know, people that are working in like, you know, in boot camps that are like drill instructors have watched that and they literally quote the dialogue to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I wouldn't go and say, hey, this movie's contributed negatively to society because people understood it the wrong way.
Well, and so as a different example of a subjectively bad movie, we both loved Free Guy, which came out recently. I highly recommend anybody see it. But the reason we decided it was quote unquote bad is it is a movie that is entirely interested and set in the video game industry, dealing with video game characters and developers and companies, that fails to address crunch at all. With actual, like, it's heavily focused on video game production and
in the last 2 days before video game comes out too.
Yes, and just it's as if this real world problem does not exist.
And of course, it's a movie made by a company that's notorious for putting its employees through crunch. So
if you this is an omission that makes it bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you weren't aware of that or didn't take it into consideration, it's a wonderful movie. I still love it. It's my movie of the year, but I think it has a glaring defect.
And that's like the subjective bit, because
exactly.
Yeah, we can I don't know. The conversations aren't interesting if you don't get into like
what it should have been,
the nitty gritty with it, right?
Yeah.
So I have a movie that I would say the same thing, and I'd actually be really curious for you guys to do a whole episode on this, whether it's me or you have another guest talk about this.
Yeah.
Nomadland. I would be incredibly interested to have you guys do it, because I think Nomadland, if that's your definition of a bad movie, Nomadland was fucking horrific.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I can say already that I 100% agree and would be delighted to talk about the problems in that movie.
From the little bit I'm aware of it, I think it would qualify for our podcast.
Oh yeah, and wasn't it Best Picture nominated? And
it won. It won Best. No, so so
there are so many bad movies that win Best Picture.
Yeah,
and a lot of them were like white savior movies. Like that was.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but I mean that that's in the certain moment. I think that there have been moments where the white savior theme, things have been so horrific with how society works in general, like and what the representation of people are in cinema in general, that like there'll be a moment where a white savior picture will win and people are like, well, there's black people in this movie, or there's Asian people in this movie.
And that's what makes them so bad.
Yeah. And you can see that movie and say, in retrospect, this isn't going to work out, because you're living in society. Not to be all Joker about it, but
yeah, we live in a society.
but I have friends of every single race and constantly interacting with each other. And you see a movie where like there's a white person at the center of it, and you're like, no, there's no way that this movie ages well. But then at the same time, at the time, it's like I'm for Tuesday's movie, which is something that completely turns this on its head. We're watching Big Trouble in Little China.
It has been a minute since I've seen that one.
White savior, and by definition isn't a white savior movie, because it does the exact opposite. Like the point of the movie is that the white person is like literally just along for the ride, and every Asian character is like, like the only reason that there even is Kurt Russell in that movie is to like explain to white people what's going on, which is hilarious. But that's been talked about endlessly, because everyone's like, oh, Big Trouble in Little China is about to be a white savior movie, and it isn't. But like, so I've been thinking about that concept a lot. But at the same time, there's a lot of movies that, they're like you watch interviews, because, on this podcast, usually like I find a bunch of interviews with actors and stuff, and I try to like delve into that. I mean, you guys saw me do that with Planet of the Apes, but like, the conversations around Big Trouble in Little China end up talking about like other Asian movies that have come out around the same time, and like, the backlash to them, and the fact that they centered white characters and were written by white, writers, and were directed by white directors. But then you realize that like there wasn't representation of, like Big Trouble in Little China is iconic for the fact that at the time there was pretty much no representation that wasn't incredibly problematic in centering a white person in America. Like, so I don't know. So but you can see that from a mile away now, but like, there's a whole context and a whole backlash to it, and a whole like, back and forth.
Yeah.
And I'm much more fascinated with all of that than I am about.
But then Snake Eyes came out this year.
Well,
like,
how many?
Snake Eyes is so bad and Orientalist and like absolute garbage movie.
And the response directed at the actors has been terrible, it seems.
They keep talking about Doctor Strange too, like, and that's a movie that got a shitload of backlash. I mean, I think there's a reason for why they chose Tilda Swinton. It was because, Disney wants to sell its movies in China, and having an old Tibetan man, be the wise person. China wouldn't allow that movie, but like, so it's like there's a lot of complicated. There's a lot of complicated. Context to all this stuff. And I don't, I think labeling things good or bad, like I think sometimes it's good to do that. I also just think though that we've had so many different weird controversies in our society in the last like 50 to 100 years of cinema that it's like you see the context and you can really break it down in these weird historical terms.
So we have this thing. We take we keep our episodes to an hour, and this is kind of the behind the scenes, like making sausage bit, right?
Yeah.
So
I've been trying to keep mine down too, and I'm really bad at it.
When our episode starts to approach an hour, because Amanda usually isn't looking at the time, we do this.
But I want to say something. I have something to say. I want to say something. Bringing it back to the room. Okay. I don't like it. Not because of incel representation, but because it has become a vehicle for James Franco, who I dislike and is a problem and has not treated a woman right.
Oh yeah.
And
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
You know, if you watch this movie unexamined as a white guy or just someone in a position of privilege who may or have some internalized misogyny that you're not even aware of, you can go out into the world and just spread that around. And James Franco seems to be doing that just fine on his own, and I don't like it, and it's a bad movie.
Jay Hutch wants to know what he says. He doesn't know what to do about his screenplay, The Wise Tibetan. I'm assuming that Jay Hutch is not Tibetan. Light it on fire.
Sell it to Marvel.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's big, maybe you can even like roast a marshmallow or something.
It'll be amazing when they produce it as The Wise Tilda Swinton.
Oh yeah, that's what's gonna happen.
Oh, too soon.
But all right, so here's a postscript to that though. Tilda Swinton was one of is Bong Joon-ho. Like we talked about Snowpiercer recently, and Tilda Swinton seems to be like Bong Joon-ho's muse in a bunch of his movies. So it's like on one hand she's contributed in that sense to kind of whitewashing of Tibetan characters, right? But at the same time, Bong Joon-ho has used her in a bunch of different ways to promote his movies have gone mainstream to a point that no other Korean cinema has gone. And she's been a big part of that. And, watching, because I watched a bunch of different interviews he did about Snowpiercer, and it's like, at the center of it, he's talking about how much Tilda Swinton is actually part of his creative process and how much they had talked about things in Snowpiercer and all these other movies. So it's like, it's kind of fascinating that on things can work on different levels like that.
Well, and I don't necessarily put it on Tilda Swinton. I think it was a bad studio choice.
Well, we do need to start wrapping up.
Right.
I am really excited to do Nomadland because that was one of those movies that I had to take a minute to think, what's the best approach? Can we do this movie yet? Are we ready for this?
I did it.
It's deeply wrong, right? I want to do it.
I did 4 streams during the Oscars, on various channels about how bad Nomadland.
Rip it to shreds. But in the meantime, we do use our Ubrick rating, which is just kind of the nonverbal response that you have first glance of this movie. Amanda, do you have an Ubrick for this?
To perfectly encapsulate my feelings towards it?
Yes.
I do. And it's something like, ugh. That's the sound.
Okay. All right. Do you have, Forrest, do you have your just nonverbal reaction to this movie?
I mean, my nonverbal reaction to this movie was hysterical laughter.
Can you preview that for us?
Yeah.
The Tommy Wiseau laugh. There it is.
Perfect. And then Amy, what's your Ubrick rating?
It's so creepy.
We do this with stars because it's just right on the money.
Yeah. It's just
very specific rating system.
Yeah.
All right. So we've hit an hour. So
we do want to remind everybody then that we are professionals, so don't watch these movies at home.
Even if Forrest tells you to.
Oh yeah.
I would say everyone should watch The Room and everyone should study The Room. And I think that there should be a full college course taught on it. And
as I just said, we're the professionals and don't listen to Forrest.
And I just think filmmakers should study The Room in detail before they start their careers. All right, so with that, I'll sign it off with your guys' great intro, outro music.
Oh, I don't.